Hello, all you fringy folks out there, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Ash, aka Fun Acceptable Views, and with me are my misses of information, Suze, aka Suze Creamy, and Tammy, aka Unacceptable Canadian Girl. Ladies, are you buckled in and ready for another informational adventure of epic proportions?
Hell yeah.
I don't buckle in for anybody. But I'm doing good. How you ladies doing?
I'm doing good today. All right. So today I wanted to delve into the disturbing topic of the false modeling used by academia in order to push forward ideological policymaking in our institutions.
Wait. Are you telling me that the experts haven't been telling us the truth?
It definitely appears that way. Mm-hmm. Who knew?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Who knew?
and
I am shocked.
Yeah. So
yes, I have my best shocked face on right now.
And it's obviously something that's been happening in many places in the Western world. And, you know, the more that I look into it, the more it appears to be creeping into all areas where policy is being developed. So I have a couple of kind of different examples of how they're using it in different areas of science and how they're using that to push forward some real ideological sort of policy that seems to have less to do with science and more to do with, I don't know, whatever the fuck they're trying to push. More to do with communism, let's say.
Fucking commies.
Don't you know by now not to question the science?
I am the science. All right. So, just as like a little bit of background, scientists create models to attempt to predict certain outcomes. But the problem is that they purposely present an artificially clean picture of scientific models to dumb it down for the masses. So this gives a huge opportunity for sketchy people to fudge the numbers. So, I mean, obviously, like, say you were looking at climate data or like temperatures around, you know, different areas. Maybe one of the thermometers isn't working. So you're going to get a reading of 0. Or if you get a reading of 240 degrees Celsius, like obviously there's something going on there. So there has to be some sort of an acceptable allowance for scientists to cut out some of those outliers in order to clean up the data. So there's an understanding that everyone tidies up their data, but let's just say that the laundry is getting done now while they're tidying up the data.
The laundry.
the old laundromat has been going. So models now it's getting more and more obvious that they're reinforcing pre-existing biases, and they're being used more and more to back decision making within our institutions. And so it's obviously becoming a huge problem in our societies because the models are replacing the collection of actual data. Most people, when they think of, you know, like you see some pretty graphs out there and you think, okay, well, that's science, I guess. Look, there's, you know, a bar graph and yeah, look at those pretty colors. And so it must be true. But in reality,
that's what I base all my scientific evidence on. If there's a rainbow pie chart, I'm in.
Yep, that's it.
I'm in.
So something that's really important to keep in mind is that models and hypotheses can't prove outcomes. They can only predict them. And so it's fine and well to use some modeling to predict up the possibility of certain outcomes, but you still need to be collecting data all the way along to, you know, verify that your model is actually working. which
Mhm.
did not seem to happen during, say, COVID. And so you're not even verifying that the models are even, were based in any sort of fact anymore. Like they're not even doing any post data collection, it appears.
Are you saying that the COVID modeling wasn't accurate, Ashleigh?
Oh, you just
What?
wait. We are going down a rabbit hole.
I'm going to have to report you for bigotry and transphobia
All right, put me in the hate gulag. Gulag.
and climate denial.
Put your
Yeah.
plastic straw
Well,
away, Ashleigh,
Yeah.
I am
Murder.
and pay
I
your
am
taxes.
guilty. Yep. I am guilty of anthropogenic climate denial. We will say that. Um,
Well,
so
you can't use that word.
that's like man-made
I see.
climate change. Um,
Thank you for not making
so
me Google that one.
I could be lying.
She is the CIA,
It
remember?
could be a model of a word. Okay, so the first one that I wanted to talk about is actually this amazing book that I just picked up. It is called Fisman's Fraud by Regina Wattil. She has a PhD in statistics. And basically, the premise of the book is to show how a fraudulent scientific method was used to create institutional policy, resulting in vaccine mandates, lockdowns, and the segregation of society with vaccine passports.
Oh,
They
shit.
used, yeah, they used a fake simulation that actually flipped the data at the time to show that the unvaccinated had disproportionately higher COVID-19 case rates. This was not what was actually in the data, um, which actually showed that the vaccinated were getting COVID in much higher rates than the unvaccinated. Um, and I don't know if you guys ever followed Golden Pup on Twitter, but he was like so diligent at putting out all of the data from oh geez, I don't know if it was just within, I think it was just like Ontario health stats. So he would compile everything and then put everything out like pretty much as often as he could. And so like all the time we were up on what the data was actually saying from our government, and it didn't seem to be making sense with what they were kind of screaming about. And so at that point, we knew nothing about the fraudulent modeling that they were using to kind of push certain policies, but we were following along with the data, and it wasn't matching up. Did you guys ever happen to see any of those tweets?
From
Golden Pup,
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. They were. He
Yeah.
was. That was quite an eye opener back then. So, anyways, David Fisman, he's the lead author of this model that was put forth, and he's a tenured professor in the division of epidemiology at U of T's Dalla Lana School of Public Health. He teaches and researches mathematical modeling of diseases to determine the rate at which people are infected with diseases. He's also a medical doctor with the College of Physicians and Surgeons for Internal Medicine. So, this is the person that we're going to be talking about for the next little bit, and he is a sketch bag. Actually, I want to add here too that the something that wasn't really made obvious at the time, but when they put out all of the data on vaccinated versus unvaccinated cases, people who were newly vaccinated within 2 weeks were considered unvaccinated. So even if they got the jabs for the first 2 weeks, they were considered unvaccinated. And it has since been shown that the rates of contracting COVID after getting the COVID vaccine were actually higher within the first 2 weeks. So it's interesting that they were called unvaccinated, but then they were also contracting COVID from the vaccine. This is being shown in studies now as they look
I've
back.
heard about this too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was unfairly being reported as unvaccinated, even though they were actually vaccinated. But it was within that 2-week period before they were, what would you say, before the vaccine was working for them, and that's in air quotes.
It was fully functioning.
Yeah. So the results
and by working, what is deemed as working? Is that like before or after you have a heart attack?
Right.
I think working is like pretty much having a job in the government, in the Liberal government. You just don't do anything. So the results in Fisman's modeling, they were passed off as factual, even though no real data was used, no hypothesis was tested, and there was no validation of the model they used. They were then published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, and he stated fabricated findings as fact when there was solid evidence to the contrary. So, as soon as you get published in a journal, then you get this sort of credibility for your studies. But it was just a model at the time. It was not based on any data. It was just, he just guessed.
Yeah. And what about like even before the vaccines, when they were like counting COVID deaths, and they were fudging those numbers as well, right? It was
That's
like,
right,
it wasn't until
Suze.
how long after that they were like, oh, sorry, these people died with COVID, not of COVID, right? It was like,
Yeah.
Just
you had
kidding.
tested positive, or if you got hit by a bus and you went to the hospital and, oh, we got to test you for COVID, and it was like, oh, he had COVID, it's a COVID death, but it's like, no, the bus, it's a bus death. Like, it's not.
Yeah. And there were huge financial incentives for hospitals and medical institutions to deem them as COVID deaths. They got paid for it.
I remember hearing a story about a girl had posted her story on Twitter. I think it was her grandmother. I believe she was in Alberta. Her grandmother was super sick. Like she was old. Like she died of old age, basically, right? But she was in the hospital and she wanted to go home. She wanted to die at home. So she was sent home, and I think her granddaughter said that she had died like within 48 hours after being home or something like that. And then the coroner came or whatever to pronounce the death, yada, yada. And she said that they said to her, if you let me label this as a COVID death, the state or the province will pay for the funeral. I'm sorry.
Wow. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
It was happening all over the place, because I know a girl too, where unfortunately her husband died in a car accident at the beginning of COVID, and when she got the report, they said he died from COVID, and she was like, nope.
Excuse me?
She ended up going after them legally to have it all changed, but
yeah,
unbelievable.
Sketch
so
balls.
there was a lot of lies being told.
Well, yeah, they got to bring those numbers up and create that mass hysteria. And that is even when the Omicron thing was in, and they were like creating again this mass hysteria, which was increasing the COVID numbers because they were convincing everybody to go get tested. It was like all these people were getting tested and probably had no symptoms to begin with, and then all of a sudden the test is coming back positive. Oh, COVID numbers are up. Oh my God.
Yep.
I remember seeing like right before Christmas lineups for people getting tested. I'm like, what are you people doing?
Yeah, and that's another thing that's like really important to kind of bring forward is the idea of a lot of people who are lining up to get tested would be like have a certain personality who probably also got the COVID shots.
They're also still wearing masks alone in their cars.
Right. Yeah, that would be the same sort of demographic.
And that's a demographic.
Oh God.
I was so happy one day. I was walking past a car and I saw like 5 masks hanging from their car turn signal, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's an actual virtue signal." So I took a picture of it and made a meme.
Of course you did.
Yep, I sure did.
You and your
Um,
meds.
oh, and like another crazy thing about like David Fisman coming out and stating things as fact is that the Pfizer and Moderna clinical trials didn't even test the ability of the jabs to reduce transmission.
Nope.
Okay, they
Right.
didn't even test the ability of the jabs to reduce transmission. They openly stated that transmission was beyond the scope of the study. Like, they didn't even test for that, and people were saying, "Oh, it'll, if you get the jab, it stops with you, you know, that's it. COVID will stop with you." So, Fisman stated things with certainty that the pharmaceutical companies couldn't even claim. So, there's a problem right there.
I remember when that came out too, in the when they were releasing the Pfizer documents, and everybody found out that they knew it would not stop transmission, and I laughed and I laughed and I
I laughed some more.
laughed, and I kept
And I told a
laughing,
few people I told you so, and then I laughed again.
and then I went and said it on Twitter. Anyways,
Then my mom blocked me.
yeah, yeah, that happened too.
Not my
That
mom,
is
your
the
mom.
funniest story.
My mom on
um
Twitter. I should get her
Also
there.
during like so when you put out a study, then it gets peer reviewed, and that's supposed to be a way for more of a balanced opinion on things. But I don't know if anyone has noticed, but the peer review process doesn't seem to be going very well either these days.
No.
It can, if certain scientists with certain ideas that they're trying to put forth, if they try and get a study peer reviewed, suddenly they don't seem to have any peers to do it. So, whereas on the other side, let's just say the peers will come out of the woodwork for that dollar bills. So,
Yep.
Dollar bills.
$1 bill, y'all. They sure will.
so Fisman claimed that there would be an explosion of death, and he literally said that, an explosion of death, similar to what happened in Italy, and then that didn't happen. So
It also didn't happen.
that yeah, well, that so I guess he was being right then. He was being factual.
Well, there was an explosion from death or of death, but it hasn't been from COVID.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
And then he actually even later doubled down by saying that the predictions that didn't come true in his model, that was actually the result of good policy that they'd put in place because of his models.
Balls.
So,
Sorry, say that again.
Balls.
The reason why the winter of death didn't happen, he says,
Death.
is because of all of the lockdowns and mandates and the vaccine passports were in place, which stopped the winter of death in its tracks. So,
On winter vagina instead. Sorry.
so
Wow.
it wasn't the obvious flaw in his model. It was actually that they'd done the right things by being communists and making everyone stay in their homes.
No.
Fucking commies.
And actually, I wanted to quote Regina here, because I just thought this was a good little statement that she said. She said, the evidence presented herein shows that the conduct in question is not a matter of unwitting incompetence or a mere difference in scientific opinion. The acts were deliberate, ongoing, and appear to have been part of a greater web of complicity. So that's not good. She actually shows throughout her book how 3 organizations are complicit by being directly connected to the study: the Canadian Medical Association Journal, the University of Toronto, and the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, which is the federal institution that funded the study in the first place. Regina actually filed complaints when she read the study. She's like, "That's bullshit." So she actually filed complaints about the study and requested a retraction by the Canadian Medical Association Journal. And they did nothing, of course.
Shock.
So she then escalated to the University of Toronto, where the model was done. And they ignored her 2 or 3 times. And then they closed the case without even looking into it. And then she ended up escalating again. She filed a complaint with Doug Ford's office and then also the OPP, because the OPP is supposed to investigate fraud. So she eventually did get a call from the OPP, and they had like a sort of an initial conversation just to gather information. She gave like a very detailed breakdown of where the fraud occurred. And then basically they called back at a later date, said they're not going to do anything with it. There's nothing here, and closed the case. So not good.
Surprised. Not me.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, in April 2022, just before Fisman's paper was actually released, the University of Toronto announced a partnership with Moderna to advance research in RNA science.
Shocker.
Interesting.
Isn't there a Moderna facility in Quebec now?
Yes, I believe I don't know if it's already there or being built, but yeah, that's scary, especially considering what's happening with the old Winnipeg labs, and we're finding out that they shipped Ebola across the world to China and labeled it cutlery or utensils. What the fork?
Oh my God.
Yeah. How about we just stop testing deadly viruses?
How about that? How about that? Stop playing with the monkeys and do something else.
But the PCR tests weren't even reliable anyways either.
No, correct.
And the I can't remember his name now, but the dude who created the PCR test, he like hated Anthony Fauci and came forward and said like these tests aren't reliable and blah blah blah.
Did he get Epstein after that?
Yep.
He died. I think, wasn't it at the very beginning of COVID? Yeah, hang on.
I didn't hear that.
Fact check myself. Yeah. One second. It was on Brett Weinstein talking to Joe Rogan.
Oh, I'd missed that.
He died
listening to that episode.
Yeah, he died in 2019.
When in 2019?
How convenient.
What was that?
Does it say when in 2019?
In August.
So he had before he could come out, and when they knew 100%. They were going to roll out COVID and they were going to roll out PCR tests, and they were like, we got to Epstein this guy before he sounds the alarms.
100%. And I can't remember how he died. It was something that seemed like it wouldn't be very suspicious, but it seems suspicious. I don't care what anybody says. Like, they can make you die from all sorts of things.
Everything.
They don't know us. We're suspicious.
We are suspicious people.
I'm fucking suspicious of everything now.
Well, yeah.
I know. And, like, the sad part is, like, even when I was doing research for this, I'm like, yep, okay. And then, yep, got it. Yep, that checks out. Like, it's so sad how just jaded I am now.
Yeah, yeah.
So to add to that whole shit show, University of Toronto had a major role in pandemic decision making. They actually hosted the Ontario COVID-19 Science Table, which advised the Ontario pandemic response and had mainly U of T affiliates involved in the process. U of T also, what do you know, aims to be a global leader in pandemic response and has launched the Institute for Pandemics, one of the world's first academic institutions dedicated to pandemic prevention, preparation, and management. And guess who is going to be the lead, who's going to have the lead role in the division of mathematical modeling and develop prevention measures and risk reduction strategies? Guess.
Kieran Moore.
No, David Fissman.
And as we all remember from last week, we cannot trust any of these universities at all.
No.
Yes.
At
Yep.
all.
No. And like, if you haven't, if you're listening to this episode and you haven't listened to episode 5, Suze, tell them for shame.
What the fuck are you doing here?
How dare you?
And go
Yeah.
back to episode 1 and listen to them all through and then come back. But Tammy,
But we did, like, we talked about the corruption of the universities and how they were allowing illegal mind control experiments on human beings. So that's what we're talking about if you haven't heard that. So these institutions can't be trusted. I don't care what it's for, a pandemic, or at this point, after our conversation last week, I wouldn't go in if I thought I was mentally ill. I'd just write it out.
right?
Yep. Yeah. I actually studied at U of T, and now I'm not so proud anymore. It was glorious, though. I felt like I was in Harry Potter. All the old buildings. I'd walk around with my scarf and my broom and just say Expelliarmus and
My wand.
What was it called? Quidditch? Did you play that too? What was were you Hugglepuff? What are the houses called again? You're a Slytherin.
Oh, I know lots of Harry
Slytherin.
Potter trivia. That's Hufflepuff.
I've never seen it, but I know like there's like weird names like Hucklepuff.
Hufflepuff,
Yeah.
Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor,
Ravenclaw.
Slytherin.
I have read the first 3 books, but I stopped.
What?
I've read all of the books all the time. I've read them. So
books
with
that I did
each new
read-
book,
Yes.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that the books that I did read, and then I did watch the movies afterwards, the books were phenomenal compared to the movies, in my
Yeah, they
opinion.
were so good.
I feel like though I should read them just because I like that J.K. Rowling gives 0 fucks.
Yep.
Yes. And you should, but
Yeah,
I'm
they're
into
good
that.
books.
You should.
They're really, really good books.
They are. Even just as an adult, like it's just fun. You feel like a kid again. It's a great story, especially like the parables are relevant today. The battle between good and evil and some of the choices that you have to make along the way. There's so many times where I draw inferences today with, even just Trudeau being like freaking Voldemort, and he split his soul into so many pieces that he can't even be made whole again. Like,
Makes sense.
I've actually read every book with every new book that came out. I read each preceding book beforehand. So I've read like all of them many, many, many times.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Good for
I'm a
you.
big fan.
Coming up soon, guys, we're going to have a full episode on Harry Potter.
I'm going to sit that one out.
You got to catch up on the books first.
Yeah.
Well, I stopped
All
at
right.
midnight, so I got to catch up myself.
So back to University of Toronto. So we're talking about the Institute for Pandemics, which is a new institute that they've put together to help with pandemic response, and they'll also be relying on U of T's Joint Center for Bioethics, which is providing its ethical decision-making capabilities, which have helped guide responses during the COVID-19 pandemic. They actually say on their website, we partner and collaborate with government, health institutions, professional bodies, community groups, and other organizations to strengthen ethical decision-making for more positive local and global health outcomes. Bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, where were you during the pandemic response?
Exactly.
So they're responsible for a lot of the policies that were made, because you know this model came out of their institution and they did nothing about it when people had issues with it. And a lot of scientists actually spoke up and said, this isn't right, like there's no data to back what these models are saying, and they did nothing. And the what is it, the bioethics the Center for Bioethics did nothing either. So,
who's surprised? Not me.
yeah. So, as it appears, the government of Canada just funded the study to justify their coercive measures.
Another shocker.
And actually, this is kind of interesting. So Fisman still does like presentations. He's as he's going to be heading up this, new institution, the mathematical modeling side of things. He's been doing presentations on the connection between climate change and infectious diseases. So perfect. You know where that's going.
Oh, can't wait to hear what his thoughts on that one.
Yeah. And did you girls, I wanted to talk a little bit about peer review. And I just happened to find out that the person who kind of started the peer review process, or actually normalized it, there was a bit of peer review going on, but in the 60s and 70s, you would not believe who actually normalized this process and kind of fucked up and diluted the whole medical journal process.
Who?
None other than Robert Maxwell, who is Ghislaine Maxwell's Aja.
What?
That is some shit.
Yep. So, and I don't know. I think it's Ghislaine or Ghislaine, whatever.
Ghislaine.
Whatever. I don't care. I don't care to say her name right.
Nobody gives a shit to say her name right.
So he actually started Pergamon Press in the 60s and 70s, and he started cranking out a bunch of journals, medical journals and scientific journals, and raised the prices on them. So he basically like diluted the ability for academics to stay on top of all the studies being produced, and made it difficult for universities to have all of the latest science unless they bought all of his products. So basically, like he started us down the road of relying on peer review just to kind of I don't know, make sure that all the studies that were out there, because there were so many in all the different journals, just to make sure that they were kind of covered, I guess. So there you go. Nothing sketchy there. Nothing to see here.
No, nothing sketchy at all.
That's so crazy. It's so crazy how they do this, like it's so insidious the way that they kind of do things and plan things out. And then when you look back and you kind of see it all laid out, you're like, holy shit.
I know. And you can start like tracing things back and saying like, oh, that's a baddie. That's a baddie. Oh, look, they're colluding together. Oh, and there's something that I actually wanted to read right from Regina's book. So I'm glad I remembered this, because this is really important. Believe it or not, Fisman had a bunch of conflicts of interest. Would you like to know what they are?
I would love to know. Please.
I'm going to read directly from Fisman's Fraud by Regina Wattiel. And it says, Fisman had numerous other affiliations that called into question potential conflicts of interest. Most notably, he had also received honorariums for advisory roles from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, the Ontario Nurses Association, Click Health, JP Morgan Chase.
Oh my gosh.
Farallon Capital, the Canada Pension Plan, and the infamous We Charity.
Wow.
So,
no way.
Yep.
We're doomed.
Yep. So there you go.
We are the aliens coming yet?
Honestly, like,
The fuck,
stop the planet. Let me off. I'm
right?
out.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, like my bag's been packed waiting for these aliens for quite some time now.
Well, the CIA is coming for us before we get to top off the planet.
They haven't come and snagged me yet today.
Because you
That's
are the
good because I'm
CIA.
hosting.
Yeah, yeah. We're getting taken down from YouTube for sure after this one.
And then there was one more excerpt I wanted to read from her book, and it's just titled "Taking Fraud to New Heights." And she says Fissman and his co-authors engaged in fraudulent activity at three levels. One, scientific fraud, fabrication and falsification of data and results, willfully misrepresenting and misinterpreting findings in a scientific journal publication. Two, health-related fraud, contriving a faux simulation to make the COVID-19 vaccines appear better than they were to encourage greater vaccine uptake. And knowing his affiliations, I think he probably would have benefited from greater vaccine uptake. She didn't say that. I just said that. Back to Regina. Political harm manifests when the fabrications influence individuals' trust in the drug, which results in greater uptake, some of whom go on to suffer adverse events. Three, hate science, advocating harm against an identifiable group of individuals, in brackets the unvaccinated, based on fraudulent claims. The researchers leveraged their positions and community standings to demonize a segment of society and attempted to defraud millions of Canadians of their fundamental rights and freedoms. This last step represents a whole new level of degeneracy in Canada. The Fissman, Toot, and Mako research study advocated for and justified inflicting harm against anyone who didn't take the COVID-19 vaccine. So that is a little too close to home for me.
Just
literally. Yeah. We're going to actually zoom out in the next little example of model fudging. We're going to go a little bit bigger and we're going to bring in Greta.
Fucking Greta.
So we're going to talk about climate change. How dare you?
You mean global boiling?
Yep. So the good thing is people are onto these tricks now. And so there are some scientists who lived through the COVID lies and the COVID shit modeling, and now they're not letting it happen again. And so there are scientists who are now seeing the same patterns happening in the climate change ideologies, and they're pushing back and they're starting to create their own studies, you know, just to prove that, you know, there are alternative viewpoints that make way more sense. But there are actually now 6 studies out there that are contradicting the current sort of climate change fear porn that's out there. So part of the problem is that when they collect a lot of this data, so they rely on a lot of things like, say, gathering temperatures. And so they see, you know, oh, the temperatures are rising here and here and here. But the problem is that we're also going through growth in our cities. And so a lot of the temperature data points that they gather are in large cities. And so there's something called an urbanization bias. And I also heard it called a heat island, where basically 40% of warming comes from urbanization, which is like mostly like the concrete just absorbs the heat. And then it actually creates warmer temperatures. So they use the increase of temps in certain cities as examples of climate change, even though they're basing it against the data that was there before the city was actually a city. So they're like, look at Chicago, it's so much hotter now. And it's like, yeah, because back when they first started collecting data, it wasn't like an actual city.
It was just
So
That is fucking wild.
yeah, yeah. And another really important thing too is that they gather data from airports. And airports are fucking hot. There's a lot of planes there, there's a lot of tarmac, and they use the data from airports because the pilots need to know what's going on with the weather. So it's a very reliable way to know what's going on. They collect all sorts of like weather data at airports. But the problem is that airports are always hotter than, say like the countryside. So that's also a way that they can make it look scarier than it is. It's like, yeah, why don't you go into a field and see what the temperature is there? It's probably a lot less.
yeah, exactly.
And
That's
also
crazy.
How else is
obviously,
Greta gonna get her big paycheck if they
yep. They actually like if you think about it too, like where are airports? Near cities, right? So
Huh.
like
Well, yeah, like look at Pearson.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Um so I did a bit of a deep dive on some of these awesome scientists who are starting to contradict the climate change fear porn. And one of the leading scientists publishing studies to show how little carbon dioxide has to do with climate change is someone named Dr. Willie Soon. And this guy is freaking amazing. I loved listening to him. He actually had a interview on Tucker Carlson like a month ago. And this guy, I just love him. Like ah, he's great. Like
Willie
he's a
Soon?
real egghead. He's super smart. But yeah, Dr. Willie Soon, Soon.
That's a
He's
fun
just
name.
got such a great personality. And like he's an astrophysicist and a geoscientist. Uh, but he claims that carbon dioxide is actually the gas of life. Like people who are demonizing carbon dioxide, if you think about it, like that is what creates um, more plant life in the oceans, obviously on land. This is um, very, very vital for our survival and the survival of all of our like for nature. And so this
Okay.
idea that carbon dioxide is so bad for us, it's actually he claims that it's actually wrong. He feels that like he actually challenged Al Gore and said, "Are you going to be responsible for the decimation that happens to this planet if you try and reduce the amount of carbon dioxide? Like we need it." Um, And he actually also talked about the idea of fossil fuels not actually being from like fossils. You don't it's a renewable resource. We don't have to worry so much about like, oh no, we're going to run out of dinosaurs. Like
Mhm.
this you I forget which I think it's like they found it on one of the moons of Jupiter, one of the like most rich resources of fossil fuels. So this idea, and obviously it's
Do we
freezing
know
there.
if they
So
were actually there? I don't know.
We don't know. We don't.
they made a rocket ship with duct tape and one one canister of gas, and they made it.
They made it, Tammy.
That sounds
They
like
made
the
it.
thing that was on the moon.
Yeah,
Duct tape and tinfoil. I can
yeah.
make a moon machine too. I'm not a flat earther. I just don't think we went to the moon or to Jupiter's moon.
I agree, and he doesn't think they went to Jupiter's moon either.
Okay, as
Yeah,
long as we've got that figured out.
yeah. So he says like climate or carbon dioxide isn't responsible for causing changes in the climate. He believes it's the sun. And he said, I'm not totally sure, but I'm about 90 something percent sure that it's the sun. He's been studying it for, he's actually worked at Harvard for 32 years. He's like, it's one of the leading institutions for scientific research in this field. and he actually just left last year due to, or maybe two, no, sorry. He left during the COVID pandemic due to vaccine mandates.
Good for him.
And he has now since started his own institution. It's called CERES, which is actually it's CERES, and it's ceres-science.com is his website. So basically, he is fully independent. He does whatever research he feels like. He doesn't take money from. He even said on his interview with Tucker, he's like, Bill Gates, no, you're not giving me any money. I don't want your money. So he's basically he's challenged many of the people who are pushing the climate change narrative and saying that it doesn't have to do with carbon dioxide, but no one will debate him. But now he started publishing some studies to prove it.
No one will debate him, eh?
Nope. No. Exactly.
Even Greta won't debate him.
Yeah. Where else did I want to go? Also, another kind of great scientist who's been talking about climate change and that the carbon dioxide side of things isn't the issue is Bjorn Lomborg. And he also talks about the idea that this all-in attack on people, like saying like, okay, you have to stop driving your cars, you have to stop eating meat, you can't have a gas stove. He's like, this is all ridiculous. This won't even make a difference. It might make a difference of like 1 degree in 100 years in climate temperature differences. So like we're going all in on this, and nobody's even questioning like how much of a change it will actually make. And he said that, of course, poor people are affected the most by climate change. But there are other things that we could be doing to make them more resilient to climate change, which would only be a few degrees anyways, in like 100 years. So he said like everything bad affects poor people the most. And that includes expensive or unreliable energy access. And so this idea of going to solar or, getting rid of the most affordable means and reliable means of heating homes or getting around, that's going to affect poor people the most. And this is what they kind of use as they're like, oh, like we have to say, they talk about, isn't there some sort of like climate racism now?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we disagree with them, it's automatically deemed racist.
And he actually made a go ahead.
There's actual, hang on. I remember doing a tweet about this, that there's what were they saying? Hang on. Yes, it's environmental racism.
Oh, that's
it.
And it's where it's a type of inequality where people in communities of color and other low-income communities face a disproportionate risk of exposure to pollution and related health conditions. What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like there's legit articles like the BBC, which is just as shit as the ZBC, did an article called "Why Climate Change is Inherently Racist." Like, you can't make this shit up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know who's writing these articles, and they're like, I should for sure publish this. This is great work.
Yeah. Well, it could be the Babylon Bee,
Yeah, they do a better job.
They're interchangeable at this point. Yeah.
They're more factual. I trust the Babylon Bee more than I trust CBC.
I know. That's so true. Bjorn actually made a kind of a funny comment. He's like, there's something weird about people saying, I see you, I care about you. I'm not going to drive to work tomorrow. So in 100 years, your descendants will be a little warmer, but slightly less warmer. Do you want, do you want to do a lot of good, or do you just want to feel good? Like this, the whole idea of like virtue signaling, like,
Wow.
like you're, I just like how he said, so in 100 years, your descendants will be a little warmer, but slightly less warmer. Like that's
Slightly
basically
less.
what we're dealing with here. And he also like talked about the idea that once you get out of poverty, you start caring about climate change. So the most important thing we could be doing is helping people to get out of poverty, not focusing on making them worse off so that they can never get out of poverty. And things like the carbon tax. I mean, we could probably go on a whole episode about that and how ridiculous it is to be taxing us for the carbon that, that we're air quotes using and just
Mhm.
making us all poorer because of it.
But we gotta get out of
Something,
poverty. That seems not right.
yeah, something that I found very interesting that he brought up is that cold actually kills 4.5 million people every year, and heat kills 500,000 people. Okay, so if we're actually gonna try and like cool down the earth, we're actually looking at probably potentially killing more people than if the earth were to heat up a little bit. There was a study actually done in the Lancet magazine, I guess a decent enough study, and it showed that the body obviously consists of a whole bunch of blood vessels that keep the core warm, and that actually causes high blood pressure if you're constantly cold. And so the the idea of being more cold could actually cause higher blood pressure and then all the complications that result from that. So like he said, even in India, 7 times more people die from cold than the heat, believe it or not. So
Wow.
it's just, yeah, we shouldn't be focusing on this. We're headed for more disastrous results than they even know.
Crazy times we're in, man. We're doomed. But what about the oceans?
Yep.
Isn't that their argument that like you're heating up the oceans and that's gonna
Yep.
rickle
and
and
and he did say like
destroying the
a
planet?
part of the problem is that we are um the climate alarmism and the fear porn that goes into to talking about this is actually making people too complacent so that they're not actually worried about the things that they could or should be worried about. Like obviously we could be doing better with certain things so that um we're not you know ruining the environment. But right now, the polar ice caps are like thicker than they were. I don't know. I forget what the stat was, but the polar ice caps right now are some of the thickest that they've been in a long time.
Wait, I think I
I,
have that.
And the
I
polar bear population is the highest in 6 decades.
but I feel like you know there's their climate change, and then there's like just don't be a douche. Like
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Common
don't
sense.
litter, don't throw your garbage on the side of the road, and like that's not even about climate change. It's just about like don't do it.
Yeah.
And that is one thing I do not litter. And if I even drop the tiniest thing on the ground, I will pick it up and I'll put it in my pocket, or I will walk it to a garbage. And I'm not like I'm the biggest climate denialist, but
Hmm.
it's because just don't do that to the planet. Don't be douchey.
Yeah. I only use biodegradable soaps because I don't want to fuck up our water systems.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Like I use Castile soaps and stuff like that
Hmm.
because I don't want to be using, well, also for myself, I don't want to use harmful shit on myself, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like it's not that hard. But I actually saw a comedian, I wish I could remember who it was, that did a thing the other day, and he was talking about how they're using like the sea turtles against us and saying saying how they're doing all these commercials with sea turtles that have straws stuck in their nose and all this stuff. And he's like, the ocean is so big and the sea turtles float. Like, what are the chances that a tiny straw in all of the ocean just like happened to land in that tiny little hole of a sea turtle's nose? And
it's probably the cokehead turtle, the resident cokehead turtle.
Right? After I listened to it, I was like, this is so legit. Who is actually falling for this shit?
The turtle's just trying to get high.
So for everybody that believed the sea turtle things, like, you need to rethink that, because as soon as I heard it, I was like, this dude actually has a point. Like, it's funny, but he actually has a point. Of all the ocean, how is that all these straws are just landing in a sea turtle's nose? Okay. I'd be more worried about all the COVIDians throwing their masks into the ocean.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hypocrites.
Yep.
Sorry, that sounded angry.
Well,
I'll take a quick breath.
We felt it. We felt the anger behind that one. We felt it.
This would make me angry too. Bjorn Lomborg actually said that if everyone in the rich world went net zero today, like just completely net zero, that's it, and stayed that way for the next century, we would reduce the temperature by 0.5 degrees Celsius in the next 100 years.
We would what?
No more forest fires, baby. That's it.
Can you say that again?
If everyone in the rich world went net zero today, like fully net zero, no carbon emissions whatsoever, and
that's you too, Taylor Swift.
We stayed that way for the next century, we would reduce the temp by 0.5 degrees Celsius in the next 100 years.
0.5 degrees Celsius, Tammy. Did you hear that? 0.5 in 100 years.
Yeah. So
stop getting on those planes, you racist.
Yeah. And also he said that there's actually, even though there's so much like just alarmism out there, there's been a decline by 98% of the deaths due to climate disasters. There's 98% less deaths due to climate disasters. So, you know. And part of that, he said, is because we're more resilient, right? Like, we're healthier people, but like,
are we though?
And we have better built houses and stuff like that. But like, we're doing okay, people. Like, just chill the fuck out. Calm your tits.
You ever see that commercial? I don't know if it's just like Government of Ontario commercial or whatever it is, where the people are like, it's like the fakest shit I've ever seen, right? And it's like the girl, and she's like in the coffee shop with her friend, and she all of a sudden she's like, I'm worried about climate change, and I'm like, no, you're not.
Oh yeah,
around from like this one workplace, everybody's talking about climate change. I'm like, this never happened.
Yeah, no,
I'm like, nobody's having this conversation. Nobody
no,
not,
for sure, no.
They're having like the conversation we're having right now. That one, I believe, more than the I'm really worried about climate change.
As they like sit on a picnic table gazing off into the sunset.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
for sure not what I'm thinking about in those moments.
Like this never happened.
I'm so worried about climate change.
I'm worried about
said no one ever.
Propaganda.
They're almost as good as and they're like ramping those up too, by the way, because like I see them a couple times a day now, but they're almost as good as the what is it, the Jardiance commercials where the chubby woman with diabetes is dancing around talking about how much she loves her pharmaceuticals.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to say that again. You just cut
like,
out for me.
Dude, just eat better.
Yep.
I got in trouble for fat shaming on that one when I tweeted about it, so I'm just going to shut up.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good segue, because the last sort of modeling that I wanted to get into is actually about more sustainable eating, and specifically cutting down on meat consumption. And so I'm going to do a bit more reading on this one because it's pretty technical. I'll try not to make it too boring and not talk about it for too long, but I think it's really important to bring up because it's pretty fucked up. what they did in this model. So there's a study on meat consumption published in the Lancet in 2019, and it's called the Eat Lancet Commission on Food, Planet, and Health: Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems, Healthier Human Lives and a Healthier Planet. So this is one of the top 20 scientific papers discussed in the past 4.5 years. One of the top 20. Okay, so it's got it, like, it's very prominent in the academic circles. It's been cited in over 4,500 papers, and it's been used to create 631 policy documents. And so basically what this is they want people to focus on a diet that contains fruits, vegetables, legumes, whole grains, nuts, and unsaturated oils, low to moderate amounts of poultry and seafood, and no amounts of red meat, low amounts of processed meats, high starch vegetables, added sugars, and refined grains.
And
So,
crickets.
so they actually, yeah, and crickets,
And crickets. Don't forget
probably, yeah, yeah. So, what this study did is they demonized red meat completely. And I don't know if you heard that, but it was no red meat. So,
Oh, I thought you
Can I
said
tell
no
you
red
guys-
meat and dairy.
I thought you said low red meat, but it said no red meat.
No red meat. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So,
Can I tell you guys a secret?
yes.
I
It's
guess
not
I'm
really a
telling the
secret.
world.
You're telling the world, but go on.
Yeah. Well, for right now, it's just between the three of us. I fell for that. I fell for that back in like 2016. I watched that stupid documentary, What the Health,
Mm-hmm.
where they like convince you to go vegan. Yeah, I fell for that shit.
Yeah, me too. I used to be a vegetarian, and now I'm carnivore.
Yeah, I went vegan for
I'm
a couple
sorry.
years. And then I quit vegan and went to vegetarian because I was like, fuck this. Nobody wants to eat day of cheese.
Nope.
And then a few years ago, I was like, no, I really want to have chicken wings again. And here we are.
Yeah,
But I fell for that propaganda.
Yep, we did too. We were vegetarian for a number of years, and we felt like shit.
Yeah, I was like getting sickly, and it wasn't cool.
Yeah.
Have never been vegan and never been vegetarian ever.
1 star, do not recommend.
So something that the study didn't do is it didn't address the lesser bioavailability of protein and the key micronutrients from plant sources versus animal source foods. So there's like obviously like a real bias there because a lot of foods, yes, they have protein, but in order to get enough protein, you'd have to have a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Or you have to have like basically chickpeas, you know, or you're eating like fake meats or soy based products, and yeah. So basically, so now, because of this study that was done 4.5 years ago, it's the basis for dietary guidelines put out by other organizations, which then falsely lends more weight to the claim because it's like a model was put out, and then research papers pick it up and write about it, and then policies made, and then basically it gets kind of validated without actually any sort of no one's actually looked into the validity of the data that they're using. So basically the study said that there was a 36-fold higher estimate of the risk of death from eating red meat in just 2 years. In just 2 years there was a change. And they basically came out and said there's this 36-fold higher estimate of the risk of death from eating red meat. And so that's because of this model that they created. So what they did was they assigned a theoretical minimal risk exposure level for each food and how much food or nutrients you're ingesting that minimizes that risk of death from all causes related to a single risk factor. Sorry, that's a mouthful, but this is really, really important. So each food is assigned a TMREL level based on the data that they collected. And they put the theoretical minimal risk exposure level for red meat. They set it to 0, which basically means they set red meat to death, is what that means. So they set red meat to death, and then they ran the model. And what do you know? It showed, oh no, if you have any amounts of red meat, it's bad for you. That
No shit.
is what they did.
You said it to
And that
death.
is what, yeah. And so that is what the policy is based on. They actually ended up like having to post the data for why they set the the red meat to death. And of course it was fatally flawed. And like a big part of the problem is that Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine were talking about this on the Dark Horse podcast. And a part of the problem is that like meat has a history of being safe. Humans have been consuming it for a very, very long time, you know?
Very, very,
and
very long time.
so, yeah. So to set meat to like death mode doesn't make any sense, but that's what they had
Activate
to do.
death mode.
That's
Yeah.
a good point.
Yeah. And so,
Right? Like I'm
they're
pretty sure the cavemen back in the day were not eating crickets. Well, maybe they were, but it wasn't like they were
sorry,
killing
Susie cut
animals.
out there.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Yep.
now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? No, I was saying like the cavemen back in the day, like maybe they were eating crickets, but it wasn't like at the top of their menu, right? They were finding
Yeah.
some animal to kill to eat first, and they were fine.
Yeah. And so, like, basically the assumption becomes the conclusion. Like, oh, well, we think that if you eat any meat, you will die. And then let's plug that into the model, and then let's see what happens. Oh my goodness, look at that. You'll die. Like, it's ridiculous. So basically, you know, like the thing is, a lot of the foods that have kind of come out on the markets, let's say like the Beyond Meat or
Ew.
some of the
Beyond
vegetarian options, right? Like they're very processed. And so maybe they're not harmful per se, but you can't say they're safe because there's not enough safety data on them. But with meat, at least you can say like over a very long time, meat seems to be relatively safe. So to designate it as like basically death is like unbelievably ridiculous.
Definitely.
So
Wow.
that is where we're at with
And we're back to we are fucking doomed.
like basically we have to get a hold of our institutions because they're not doing science anymore. This is not science. They are doing modeling, and it's very disturbing the policies that they're able to make with these fraudulent models.
Well, they're doing modeling to accommodate whatever shit they want to do to us next, is what they're doing.
Yep.
And that's pretty crazy.
And I just have to say, the whole week,
fat, sick, and stupid.
Yep, comes back to that. The whole week that I was doing this and just thinking, like, modeling over and over again, and all I could think of was Right Set Fred. I'm a model, you know what I mean, and my little turn on the catwalk. So that's been in my head all week. And you're welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks. Now I'm going to have that earworm tonight.
Throw in a rap now.
I have to say that my recording doesn't say actually the time this time for how long we've been talking. So, and I didn't actually note when we started talking. So I think we're pretty close to being done.
We're good. We're at 109.
Oh, all right. Well, that would give us just enough time for Suze. Suze, did you have some time to think about what you want to do for our next episode?
Oh,
Hello?
I did. I did. So, oh, can you not hear me again?
Yes, I
Can
can.
you
I
hear
think
me
you
now?
just took a really long pause.
Fuck is going on? What the fuck? Okay.
Uh-oh.
We, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. I'm just checking. I didn't want to start talking and then you'd be like, Suze, we can't hear you. Um, so we're gonna have a chat about the hill I will die on, transgenderism, woke school boards, the compliance of teachers and how that's affecting, the effect that's having on our kids. And as a special treat, I don't have 100% yet, but my nephew and his friend might join us to talk about what he is specifically seeing going on in his school currently.
First-hand account. I like it.
Yeah, I'm into
Yes, yes.
this.
So that's what we're gonna talk about.
All right. That will be an interesting one for sure. I have lots to say on the topic.
Yeah, I'm sure we all do.
I'm kind of sad that we didn't touch on winter vagina here. I don't know about anybody else, but
Oh,
I was looking forward to that.
I
Went
forgot.
ready to go. Okay, so Ashleigh wants to know what winter vagina is, right, Ashleigh?
You know what? We have time.
Of course we have time. We have time.
All right. Let's
We
talk
have
about it.
time. So winter vagina. If you thought you could ignore your bikini region during the no shaving winter months, you might be surprised to hear about a phenomenon called winter vagina. Sorry, Ashleigh's dad. This isn't a new body hair removal trend. No, no, no. It's a label some people apply to the feeling of dryness or chafing in the genital area during cold weather.
Okay.
Now, I got some more. This term originated in an article from the UK that claimed that vaginas can dry out in cold weather. Right? Drier winter weather sucks the moisture from our bodies, leaving our skin dehydrated.
Sure.
Many people have the heating on and take, hotter than normal baths during the winter, etc., both of which can further dry out the skin, including your vagina, which is bullshit. Because as every real woman would know, the vagina is completely self-cleaning and can take care of itself thanks to the balanced microbiome that exists in the vagina. It's special regulating and self-lubricating. Thank you.
You hear
pH
that?
level.
Vaginas can take care of themselves.
That's right. I'm sure those neo-vaginas cannot. But however, I would like to point out that while you don't have to worry about winter vagina specifically, some people do experience vaginal dryness. Now, the difference is that the vaginal dryness isn't, due to external factors. It's due like heating or whatever, right? It's due to internal ones. And the number one reason for vagina dryness is low estrogen levels, which I would assume that the ones with neo-vaginas probably have naturally a lower estrogen level anyways, because their estrogen is being injected. Am I wrong? Like, that's my theory here. Like, when did we first start hearing about this winter vagina? I feel like it's when this, like, trans thing was becoming, like, more, heard of. And I would imagine that someone that doesn't have all that self-lubricating and those natural pH levels would probably suffer from something.
You mean somebody who's not a real fucking woman?
That's exactly what I mean. Yes, I would imagine
Let's
that they
just
would probably
call a
suffer.
spade a spade here.
They would probably suffer from something that would, be labeled as winter vagina.
I'm surprised it's not called winter bonus hole.
It's coming. It's coming. Give it time. Give it time.
Yeah. Next winter.
I have a theory on some of this stuff. So like vaginal dryness. Can't believe I'm saying this to people. But also,
Sorry, Dad.
Yeah, sorry, Ashleigh's dad.
You have managed to let you down once again.
But also, we let Ashleigh's dad down every podcast. But also things like all of a sudden women are having like these crazy bouts of like this perimenopause shit and whatever. And my theory is they've been loading women up with birth control from the time that they're 16 all the way through until they're whatever, their 40s, whenever, I don't know, whenever you get perimenopause, I guess. And I'm starting to wonder if it has something to do with the fact that they're messing with people's hormones. And like, I've never taken that shit. I did a brief stint and got very, very sick from it. Years and years and years ago. Like, it would have been early 20s maybe. So I've never really touched it other than that. But I can tell you, I have a lot of girlfriends that are currently dealing with some weird shit that took like the depot shots. And the depot shot seems to be the biggest culprit. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying I notice patterns. And this is what I'm noticing with some of my girlfriends where I'm like, wait a second. Could this be because we're messing with hormones so much?
That is interesting.
Like, it does even say here it's more likely to affect those who are going through or have already been through menopause due to the declining estrogen levels, right? So, yeah, if you're messing naturally, like throughout your life, if you're messing with your hormone levels, for sure, it's going to change those natural levels in your.
I had a conversation with my aunt about like perimenopause and menopause and all this other stuff. And she's a very, very natural person. She's never been on anything. She hasn't been to the doctor in like 40 years. Like, it's wild. She eats, everything farm fresh because she lives out in the middle of nowhere and does her own garden and all that stuff. Right. And so, she said she never even experienced menopause, not in the sense of like how we hear about it now.
Oh, interesting.
Wow. Yeah. She said she just, she stopped getting her monthly and that was it. She was, but then she said she noticed like with friends of hers, that had been on, a lot of birth control and stuff like that, they would get like these wild hot flashes. And she's like, I never had any of that. She's like, I just stopped getting it. And that was that, the end. So this is why I'm kind of like, I don't know. I think there's something to this. I mean, since when have we ever been able to trust pharma in the first place?
Exactly.
Yep.
But it's literally messing with your hormones to take this stuff. So I'm like, hopefully everybody that's currently taking birth control doesn't like come at me on Twitter and get all pissy pants about this. But like, I'm just saying.
It's just a working theory, everybody. It's just a working theory.
Yeah. What did you say earlier, Ashleigh? Calm your tits.
Yeah.
Calm your tits.
Calm your vaginas.
Yeah. Don't shoot the messenger.
Calm your
I'm just here to like bring this up and kind of make people think about it because I have some friends that they're young and they're going through some of this stuff and I'm like, whoa, this is not normal.
That's very interesting. And like people who took birth control, like they're the first generation that, like, what am I trying to say? The ones who are going through like for a past menopause now, they're the first generation that actually took birth control throughout their lives. It hasn't been around for that long as far as like the pill or whatever else. So we don't even know what the outcomes can be for this because we're not that far into the what am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say. It's still pretty new.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And now we have this generation that basically when they started it, it's now coming around full circle to where they're hitting like, that time.
That is what I was trying to say. Thank you.
You're welcome. I knew what you were getting at. And now they're all fucked up.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's just my theory. I don't know if that's what winter vagina is all about or whatever, but I think it needs to be looked at more. If somebody's listening and you're like a doctor that's not paid by pharma, I would love to know your take on this. Because I actually would love to speak with somebody and have a conversation about could this be a thing? Because I think it could.
I think you're onto something there. I think you're both I think you're both onto something there because both can be right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everybody,
All right.
keep those vaginas
Well.
dry. Winter, spring is around the corner, and then you come in full circle into sweaty summer vagina.
There you go.
Ugh.
Good news. Good news, ladies. Summer vagina's coming.
Summer vagina.
Yeah, and the season of swass.
Sweat.
Sweaty ass. Sorry, Ashleigh's dad. I'm so sorry, Harold.
Harold.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
This got out of control. It always gets out of control.
Well,
Always.
I think that's a
Right.
perfect way to end it.
a
Sorry,
good end.
Dad.
Sweaty summer vagina. Sorry, Ash's dad.
All right.
Winter
Well, everyone,
swass.
thanks for tuning in to us three nut bars, and we'll hopefully catch you on the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.